I'm going to introduce Miss Kimberly Jones now for her award.
Get on up now.
All right, so here's your award.
Thank you. This one for you. I think they're both for you. That's what she gets for not coming. Get a gift from me again. Give these beautiful ladies a round of applause. Seagull's gonna be so mad she missed this. I'm gonna exaggerate. I'm gonna tell her they have dancing monkeys in that lobby. Oh my God, these two already, I already with the waterworks. Because when Gili and I wrote this book, the world told us it was trash. I remember our first trade review. We were at, this doesn't even happen anymore. You guys remember this BEA? And we were so excited to be at BEA. And we got this email from our publisher with our first big trade review, and it was terrible. It said that I had written a poor representation of Black life. It said that Gili had written a stereotypical Southern white girl in a way that was uninteresting. And we went in a corner at BEA and we cried. And then we came out and we cleared our face up because we had a signing line that we had to go to. And we ran into Lori Hall Sanderson. And she was like, what's with the waterworks, you two? And we showed her the review. And she told us that same reviewer had wrote on her second book, Lori Hall Anderson started off a career that was so promising. And then it ripped her to shreds. And standing there in the hallways at Javits Center, Lori Hall Anderson called out that reviewer's name and said, F them, and told us to go sign our books. So we walked around the corner and we were trying to pull our little selves together and cover our little sniffles and put on a brave face, and we saw this massive line of 300 people. And we were like, man, whoever that's for, that's so cool. Maybe we'll get there one day. And we're like, we'll go sit at our little table and sign our 4 books, but whoever that is, kudos to them. And we turned the corner and they directed us to where we sat and realized that line was for us. And that's kind of been how me and my sister's journey has been. It's been really high highs and really low lows, but I've been so grateful to be able to take the journey with her. I think about, we are now working on our 4th book together, but I think about people who have to take this, to all the authors in here who have to take that roller coaster ride together when you're out in submission, and then when you when you query, and then you're out on submission, and how difficult it is. And it's what a blessing it's been to be with that fiery little redhead every step of the way. And some days I feel good, and she's down, and some days it's the opposite. And we've always had each other to lean on, to cry with, to love with, to travel with. Although they do know to put us always in separate hotel rooms because we live in 2 different temperatures. But it's interesting how life imitates art. Gili and I were in a book club together for adult women. That's when I was a bookseller, which I like to think of a bookseller as a distant cousin to a librarian.
Yes.
I was a bookseller at Little Shop of Stories in Decatur, Georgia.
Woo!
And we ran, me and my good friend, Vanya Stoyanov, another author, Vanya, we had a book club called the Not So YA Book Club. We originally called YA for wine drinkers, but we eventually became the Not So YA Book Club, which is a YA book club for adult women who like to read YA. And we started to discover that many women in this book club also had aspirations to write. And so we started doing these writing retreats up in the North Georgia mountains. Well, needless to say that that original book club, which was about 12 people, 10 of us are now published. And so Gili and I were on a retreat together, and my ambition was to write picture books. I wanted to be a picture book writer. And I was working on a picture book about my son called Drake the Dragon. And Gili was working on a YA novel, and we set out on the like we were like Dorothy and Blanche, we set out on the lanai. We set out on the lanai and we talked about our lives and that we had both made the mistake of the original sin, which is marrying professional athletes. And we have both since divorced them. And we just had this connection, all these things about our lives that made sense. And so we became friendly, but not friendly enough to where like we had each other's phone numbers. But we would see each other at author events and book club and stuff, and always sit with each other because we also both have a terribly dark sense of humor, and we're like, no one else is gonna get this. Look at that. And then there was the unfortunate death in Baltimore of Freddie Gray. And Gili read this article. She read this article about a group of kids at Frederick Douglass High School who, when they found out the civil unrest was about to start happening, a lot of people made a lot of big mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes that was made was they shut down school early. That wasn't the mistake. The mistake was that the city simultaneously decided to shut down public transportation, which means most of those kids, high school students, were trapped. And they couldn't get home. And so Gili read this article about this group of kids who got caught by, who were not protesters, who were not activists, but just kids who could not get home and their parents could not get to them, and they were trapped behind this police barricade in the middle of civil unrest. And so, you know, we're writers, so that's how we process things. So she came into the bookstore where I worked, and she kind of lurked around to the point where one of my employees was like, Ms. Jones, do we need to call Shirley? Now, Shirley was a local beat cop who loved to tackle people.
I can't.
You can always count on Shirley for a nice tackle or something was going on. I'm like, I don't think she needs to be tackled. I'm like, I know her, she's in my book club. And so, Gina's a lawyer by trade, and so she had all these bullet points. She was gonna lawyer me into writing this book. And she got through like 2 of her bullet points, and I stopped her right there, and like all the white, like all the color went out of her face. She went completely white. I think she thought she had insulted me. And although now that I know her, I'm like, she doesn't care if people are insulted. And I said, you had me at Let's Write Together. And we told that story at college once, and they didn't know what we were talking about, and we realized that the movie came out before those children were born. So now we try to think of a new way. I'm like, that's what happened, but then we feel 800 when we tell it. And they're like, so that's a statement you came up with. Hush up, child. And so we started on this journey, and we started writing this book, and then everybody's little darling, Jason Reynolds, put out Halloween. It's been beef with me and him ever since. Every time I see him, I'm like, nemesis. And you know what he does? Sidebar. Let me tell you what he does. He goes around and tells everybody how much he loves Kim Jones because he knows I go around telling people how much I hate him. Reynolds. Don't high five him if you see him. Jason Reynolds and all his wisdom. God, I hate smart people. He put out All American Boys. We got an advanced reader copy of it, and I was like, Kenny, this book is dead. It's already been done by two people who are way better writers than us. Brendan is also genius. And I'm like, and also, Jason is a black dude with dreads. I'm a black girl with dreads. Brendan's a redhead. You're a redhead. We're cloaked. She's like, whatever, nobody's studying that girl. See, people think that I'm Lena in the book. Gili is Lena. I'm Campbell. I'm like, I'm lost. What are we gonna do next? And so I text Jason and I was like, you suck so bad. I didn't hate you already. I bet you know it's increased. Everyone keeps telling you you're handsome. You're fugly. I was like, you and Brendan stole me and Gili's book. Now what are we gonna do? You're already famous. We can't put ours out. And he said we got the sweetest message because this is the way he villains. And he said, you have to tell your story because we need the story from all perspectives, from all walks of life. And he's like, every time me and Brendan go to a school and they ask about the women that should be in this book of ours, we will tell them to read yours. And I was like, if you get any more special, I'm just gonna slap you in the face. I love that big idiot. And so we put this book out in the world and it got bad reviews, but thank God for librarians. Oh my God.
Woo! Yeah!
Because school librarians who have these types of conversations with kids every day understood why we wrote it. And they understood why kids needed. And we had librarians who had been in schools where there had been school shootings who reached out to us and said, I've been using your book to help my kids process. We had a teacher from Ferguson send us something and say, I've never known, I'm actually the music teacher. And I have kids who have severe PTSD from the civil unrest in Ferguson, and I've never been able to let them process. And so we, as the music class, did a book club around your book, and the kids were able to see themselves in the characters, and we were able to walk through it. And then actual civil unrest happened a year later, in 2020, and this little book that had done well enough, my author friends in here will know, we had earned out, you know. They know what I'm talking about. So we were doing okay. We were kind of having a little bit of a meteoric rise. We got a couple cool awards. We were like, all right, let's work on our second book because this one is mid. So this happens, and then the civil unrest happens of 2020, and now we start being on all these lists, and all these people are saying that you should read this, or if you're trying to process with your children, here's a way to do it. If you're trying to you need a piece of art to help you enter into these difficult conversations and see this perspective and all of this, then you should do it. And then I decided to take my big mouth down to a protest. And I tried to explain to America what it feels like in black skin in this country, and I likened it to a game of Monopoly where you don't get to play, but you have to play on behalf of someone else. But the money that you raise and earn is going to someone else. And then when you finally get a chance to play, someone tells you to catch up. But the only way that you can catch up is if they share the wealth. And if they don't, it's a rigged game. And I said that in a video that night, and my friends and I posted it, and I went to bed and I had about 800 followers on Instagram, no followers on Twitter, all of this. And I woke up the next morning and all of a sudden I had 200,000 followers on Instagram, and 100,000 followers on Twitter, and 15,000 followers on Facebook, and 100,000 followers on TikTok. And I was like, what happened? And Gini was like, you genius idiot. Because that is exactly how she talks to me, and I love it. She's like, LeBron James just posted your video. And so did Madonna, and Oprah Winfrey, and Viola Davis, and Kelly Clarkson, and Ryan Seacrest. And I was like, she's like Sharon Stone. You're on Sharon Stone's page right now. Alanis Morissette. And I was like, what video? And she's like, how can we win? That speech that you gave last night at the protest, how can we win? It's everywhere. She's like, it's on CNN. She was like, John Oliver is talking about it on his show. It's on MSNBC. It's on Good Morning America. And I'm like, oh, really?
Yes,
and she's
ma'am.
like, yeah. And so this little book that Judy and I had to fight for so long that we had to like beg publishers to send us to like, we called it, we were on the chitlin circuit our whole time. We were like, please give us $8 to drive to Memphis tomorrow. I promise we'll sell some books. And in 24 hours, that little book made the New York Times bestseller list.
Woo!
So long-winded. I told them I was going to be 10 minutes. I've been up here for 2 hours.
Love it. Keep going.
But, all right, I'm about to get the sniffles. Darn it, I was trying to be tough. This journey means nothing without Keely Siegel. Because I'm a little neurodivergent kid who is a woman, was born in the 70s, raised in the 80s, when they hadn't figured out how to diagnose little girls with ADHD yet. And my whole life, all I heard was that I was bad. Every report card I have says she talks too much. Joke's on you, I got paid to talk now. And if it wasn't for 3 really big moments in my life, I don't know where I would be. And I was telling them at the table, the first big moment is Carter G. Woodson Library that was just blocks away from where I grew up in Chicago. You couldn't do this now, you get arrested now, but it was the 80s, it was wild. We had to make a commercial to ask our parents if they knew where we were. 10 o'clock, do you know where your children are? It's 10 o'clock. You should know where your children. Why do we need a commercial?
I remember those commercials.
That silent generation was rough. Saturday mornings, because I was my mother's most misbehaved child of the 7 of us. My mom and dad would drop me off at Carter G. Woodson Library, and the librarians there would just let me run wild like I was Eloise for hours while my parents did their errands. Also, wildly irresponsible of both those librarians and my mother. And how my father co-signed this is, you know, Dad, I hope you're getting it straight up there. And they knew that I loved nonfiction picture books. And so when I would get too wild in there in the library, they would just pile up the table with nonfiction picture books for me, and I would just read them. And I had this amazing, that was the first point, was those very kind librarians who were forced to babysit a child they were not responsible for. The second was my 7th and 8th grade teacher, Ms. Carolyn Lumpkin, who maybe didn't have the language, the words, or the understanding then to understand that this is what ADHD looks like in a little girl, but understood every now and again I just needed a break. And what she would do at that break is she would say, Ms. Jones, do you have a lesson you want to teach today? And I was like, actually, I do. So anyway, you guys are gonna turn your textbooks to, and she would let me teach like 30 minutes of class, and I would teach from all those books that I would read on Saturday. And the third was when I met that beautiful redhead that you saw in that video, who understood that writing with me was gonna have to have a different system. Because if I'm not stimulated, I'm gonna be difficult to get something accomplished. If it's a day when I don't feel like it, that's what the two pieces of my brain are not talking to each other. Yeah, I know we need to do these words. I would prefer crocheting this moose hat. You think my moose hat isn't important, Gary? This is an attack on my personage. And so she created a writing system that will help me be productive. And she never talks about it publicly because she always has said to me personally that she felt like if she figured out a system to get the best out of me, it's nobody's business how we do that. And it's rare to find that kind of friend. And it's even more rare to be a neurodivergent adult and have people extend you that kind of grace. And so she's my sister. And in these trying times, where the world is trying to convince us that our differences are the totality of our personality, for me, this little neurodivergent girl from the south side of Chicago, to be able to take this walk with this fiery redhead Jewish girl from southern Florida, and to show the world that you can have difficult conversations if there's respect there. And to show the world that your differences can be the beauty in your relationship. That the balance of those differences can be the beauty in your relationship. And that kindness, grace, and understanding is something that we practice. If we could just give each other the grace that we give the McDonald's ice cream machine. You know it does work. Yet you still ask for that McFlurry because you have faith. One day you're gonna go there. That shake is gonna be yours. And although it may not come on time, it may not be the Shamrock Shake of March, you may be able to get a caramel frappe. We don't judge the machine. We don't tell McDonald's to get rid of it. We just hope. And this is what I hope our book does for you. We are not going to change the world overnight. We may not see it in our lifetime. But boy, if we just give all a little bit of hope, you might get your ice cream. Thank you.